One of the most dangerous men in the Mahabharata had no army, no divine weapon, and no throne. He was dangerous because he could see the truth before disaster made it obvious. Vidura kept warning the Kuru court when almost everyone else chose convenience, fear, attachment, or silence. The deeper question is not only why Vidura spoke. It is why power kept refusing the one man who was trying to save it from itself. That is what makes Vidura unforgettable. He is not a warrior at the edge of battle. He is a counselor standing in the room where bad decisions are still reversible. He sees envy becoming policy, attachment becoming blindness, and strategy becoming corruption. The tragedy is that wisdom arrives early, but power usually wants it late, after the cost of ignoring it has already become unbearable. And because this is the Mahabharata, the issue is bigger than one wise advisor. Vidura forces us to ask what truth to power really means when the powerful are your own family, your own king, your own civilization. Is it enough to know what is right? Is it enough to advise gently? At what point does counsel become resistance, and at what point does silence become complicity? So this episode follows Vidura from warning to warning, from insight to insult, from loyalty to separation. The story keeps tightening around one hard lesson. A kingdom rarely falls because truth was unavailable. It falls because truth was heard, postponed, managed, and finally rejected by people who preferred comfort over correction. That is why Vidura still feels painfully modern. Vidura's clarity is not an accident. He stands close enough to power to understand it, but far enough from its intoxication to judge it. He belongs to the royal world without being trapped by the same entitlement that warps its heirs. That distance matters. In the Mahabharata, wisdom often belongs to the person who can see the system from inside and outside at the same time. He also understands a truth many courts refuse to learn. Personal affection does not excuse public failure. Dhritarashtra may love his son, but a king who lets paternal attachment overrule justice is not being compassionate. He is becoming dangerous. Vidura keeps pushing that distinction again and again. Private feeling has limits when the fate of a kingdom is being bent around it. Vidura sees character as destiny in slow motion. He can read Yudhishthira's moral weakness, Duryodhana's swelling envy, Shakuni's manipulative intelligence, and Dhritarashtra's helpless attachment before those traits fully harden into catastrophe. This is why his warnings are so sharp. He is not reacting only to events. He is reading the people who will create the events if no one stops them in time. That makes Vidura different from Bhishma. Bhishma also sees much of the danger, but he remains bound to his vow and to the throne's structure. Vidura is loyal too, yet his loyalty is aimed more clearly at the kingdom's moral survival than at the comfort of the king. The Mahabharata respects duty, but here it quietly asks which duty matters more when the throne itself starts serving adharma. The dice hall is where Vidura's warnings become impossible to misunderstand. He knows this is not entertainment. It is a political weapon disguised as a game. Shakuni is not merely gambling. He is engineering moral collapse. Vidura sees that if the court allows deceit to define royal conduct, then the issue will no longer be a lost wager. It will be the public breakdown of justice itself. And Vidura also sees a second layer of danger. Yudhishthira is not only being cheated. He is helping the trap by staying in it. That is what makes the episode so painful. Vidura understands that adharma grows stronger when manipulation meets weakness. The crisis is not created by one villain alone. It is created when vice finds openings in the hesitation, vanity, or passivity of others. When Draupadi is brought into that court, Vidura's moral position becomes even clearer. He recognizes the act for what it is, Not a procedural question, not a legal technicality, but a violation that exposes the court's soul. If a kingdom can watch a woman be humiliated while debating formalities, then the kingdom is already rotting from within. Vidura understands that the real emergency is not confusion. It is cowardice wearing ceremonial language. This is why Vidura matters so much in the dice hall. He proves that the court was not completely blind. Someone knew. Someone objected. Someone named the danger before the final collapse. That matters because it removes the excuse of ignorance. The Kuru court did not fall because nobody saw the wrong. It fell because the people with power chose not to obey the truth already spoken among them. So why does Dhritarashtra not simply listen? Because truth is not rejected only by wicked men. It is often rejected by weak men who know the truth but fear the personal cost of obeying it. Dhritarashtra does not lack information. He lacks the strength to wound his own attachment for the sake of justice. That is what makes him so tragic and so politically dangerous at the same time. Duryodhana rejects Vidura for a different reason. The proud do not hear counsel as counsel. They hear it as resistance. Vidura becomes intolerable to him precisely because Vidura cannot be bought by praise, kinship, or fear. That is always threatening to corrupt power. The one person who cannot be manipulated becomes the person who must be isolated, mocked, or expelled before his truth gathers too much force. This is also where the Mahabharata becomes brutally realistic about institutions. Wisdom does not win automatically just because it is true. It must pass through personalities, fears, hierarchies, and wounded egos. A decaying court can hear excellent advice and still become more corrupt because every delay gives vice more time to organize itself. Vidura is right, but rightness alone cannot govern a kingdom whose rulers are addicted to self-deception. That isolation is central to truth to power. If your speech costs nothing, it has probably not reached the real nerve of power yet. Vidura keeps speaking even when he is no longer admired for it. He speaks when the room is turning against him. He speaks when the king is embarrassed, when the prince is enraged, and when the silence of others becomes its own pressure. This is courage without spectacle. Eventually the conflict becomes open. Duryodhana does not merely ignore Vidura. He humiliates him. That shift matters. A corrupt court first postpones truth, then resents truth, then punishes truth. By the time that pattern is visible, the institution is already far deeper in decline than it wants to admit. Vidura's insult is therefore not a private scene. It is a political diagnosis of what the Kuru court has become. When Vidura leaves, the Mahabharata gives us one of its most painful images. The kingdom is not losing a clever minister. It is losing a conscience it could no longer tolerate. And Dhritarashtra's weakness becomes even clearer, because he values Vidura's wisdom most when he is already losing him. This is one of the oldest political lessons in the world. Some rulers seek honest counsel. Others only mourn it after driving it away. Yet Vidura's significance does not end with departure. Walking away does not mean abandoning Dharma. Sometimes it means refusing to decorate Adharma with your presence any longer. That distinction is crucial. Loyalty is not servitude. Counsel is not surrender. A person can remain committed to the good of a kingdom while refusing to help a corrupted center pretend that it still deserves unquestioned obedience. After that, the logic of collapse accelerates. Once truth has been insulted and expelled, what remains inside the court has fewer breaks, fewer warnings, and fewer witnesses with authority. This is why Vidura's story belongs to the civilizational heart of the Mahabharata. It teaches that the fall of a house begins long before the battlefield, when the last credible warning becomes easier to dismiss than to obey. So what is Vidura's deepest lesson? He shows that truth to power is not performance. It is disciplined loyalty to reality when reality has become inconvenient to those in command. Vidura does not flatter himself as a rebel. He tries to preserve the kingdom by telling it what it least wants to hear. His greatness lies in speaking before applause, before vindication, and before history proves him right. He also helps us judge other forms of duty more clearly. Bhishma teaches the burden of oath. Draupadi teaches the force of moral challenge. Vidura teaches the responsibility of counsel. Together they show that Dharma is not protected by status alone. It survives only when someone is willing to interrupt the drift toward wrong, even if that interruption brings loneliness, insult, or political loss. That is why Vidura still matters far beyond the palace of Hastinapura. Families, institutions, and nations all create moments when the easiest life feels safer than the hardest truth. Vidura reminds us that delayed truth does not become harmless truth. It becomes more expensive truth. The longer power refuses correction, the more correction returns later as humiliation, fracture, and grief. So remember Vidura not as a side character, but as one of the Mahabharata's clearest tests of courage. Can you keep speaking when truth stops being welcome? Can you stay loyal without becoming obedient to corruption? If this episode helped you see the Mahabharata more deeply, like this video, subscribe to EkalavyaLearn, and turn on the bell icon so you receive the next story on time. The next sharp question in this chain may be even darker: how Shakuni turned strategy into revenge and helped bring a dynasty down.